Hello, everybody. This is Mr. Walker. Today's topic is using multiplication to solve division problems. By the end of this video, hopefully you will be able to use multiplication facts to solve division problems like these. 36 divided by 9. I'm going to use my 9 and I'm going to create a multiplication equation, and then we'll equal 36. So 9 times n equals 36. The n would represent an unknown value. Using my multiplication facts, I'm going to use a chart here. 9, and if I count down to 36, 1, 2, 3, 4, so n would be equal to 4, and then 36, and you can see that when I put 36 here and compare it to the 36 here, I have no remainder. So 36 divided by 9 is equal to 4, and that's using multiplication as a strategy. Like every lesson, there's always vocabulary, and for today's lesson, we have this unusual looking, it's not really a box. They refer to that as a division bracket, and many times you'll see something curved like that. It's also referred to as a long division symbol. I just like to call it a division box, just a little bit easier to say. So today's lesson is focusing on using long division and using brackets or symbols that look like this. When you do division, there are some vocabulary terms. The large number that we're dividing into equal groups is referred to as the dividend. The number of groups that we are creating is called the divisor. And the answer on top here is referred to as the quotient. And I think that for today's lesson and just moving forward, the main one that you really need to be familiar with right now is the quotient, or in other words, the answer to a division problem. So for example, when you read a problem like this, it is kind of unusual. You're kind of reading in a clockwise motion here. You would say 36 divided by 9 is equal to 4, which is kind of goes counter to the way we're used to reading from left to right. So again, you would read that as 36 divided by 9 equals 4. You could also write it like this, 36 divided by 9 equals 4. However, we're really focusing on a long division strategy today. Remember, one of the key ideas in division is that we are looking for equal groups. Often it's referred to as fair share. And the whole idea is that when we are dividing, we want to make the each of the groups equal. So for example, you could model that with these dots here. 12 divided by 3 is equal to 4. And you can see here that we have our dividend is 12, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So there's our 12. If we were to divide it into 3 groups, remember that the groups must be equal. And we could show that by drawing circles like this. And so we have 1, 2, 3 groups that we've circled, and that represents our 3, which is the divisor. And then our answer would be 1, 2, 3, 4 is in each group. And you can see that there's 4 in the second group and 4 in the bottom group. Also keep in mind that when we're using long division, the whole idea of place value. I'm going to kind of extend that a little bit. So you can see here that 12, in this case, 12 divided by 3, 12 is our dividend. And keep in mind that the 2 would be in the ones position and place value, and the 1 would be in the tens. So that when we solve this problem, and we saw that we have our answer up here, that 12 divided by 3 is equal to 4, it would be appropriate, because 4 is just 4 ones, that you would place it above the 2 and the 12. It's not a hard, fast rule, but it's a good habit to get into as the problems get a little bit harder down the line. Keep in mind that the whole idea of today's lesson is that we're using multiplication to solve division. And the reason why we can do that is that they call that inverse facts. Sometimes they'll refer to that as inverse operation. Some people refer to it as fact families, but quickly, the idea here is that, for example, if we used some facts that involve numbers 2, 3, and 6, we could say that 3 times 2 equals 6. Or we could switch our factors here and say 2 times 3 equals 6. We could also use the same numbers to do division. For example, 6, you can see the 6 here, divided by 2, and again you see our 2 here, is equal to 3. Or we could say 6 divided by 3 is equal to 2. Well, that becomes very helpful when we use today's strategy. So, for example, 24 divided by 3. I want to use multiplication to solve this division problem. Well, the 3, let's see if I can kind of show that like this. And this is a division statement, so we want to create a multiplication equation. Now, the 24 is going to be our total, so we don't know. We're looking for this value right here, so I'll leave that blank right now. And then the 24 would come over here. And you can see that we have our building blocks. We have our 3, which becomes a factor. The answer up here would be our next factor. That's the one that we're looking for. And then we have our product, or our answer would be 24. So we've got our building blocks here. This is where you can use a strategy for multiplication. I'm just going to use a chart today because it's just so visual. So 3, and if I count down to 24, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Notice that I said 8. So we could say that 3 times 8 is equal to 24. That 8 goes right there like that. And then the 24, as we're going to find out in later lessons, when the problems get a little bit tougher and we will have to find remainders, you can see that the 24 is exactly the same. If we were to subtract to find the difference, it would be 0. So in this case, 24 divided by 3 is equal to 8. Let's try a few more. 42 divided by 6. Again, we're going to use our division problem to write a multiplication. So again, I'm just going to, you don't have to draw these when you're solving it. I'm just drawing it to show you. So we have our 6 times blank. I'm just going to leave that blank for now. And then the 42 is over here. Now, I usually like to use the letter n for the unknown. They call that a variable. We'll talk about that in a future lesson. But usually like a letter like that would represent an unknown number. So in other words, 6 times n equals 42. Well, we can now use our multiplication chart. I'm going to go to the 6. And we're going to go down to the 42. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I counted 7. So in this case, our unknown number is 7. I'm going to circle that. I'm also going to circle the 42 because both of these numbers are important when we're doing long division. This 7 is going to come up over here. So in other words, 42 divided by 6 is equal to 7. But in future problems that are a little bit more difficult, the 42 would actually come over here. And we'll explain that in a future lesson where we would have to find the difference. Sometimes we're going to find that the number isn't always the same, but we'll get to that in another lesson. And you can see that 42 minus 42 would be 0. Let's try another one. 18 divided by 3. So again, I'm going to use our information in our division problem to create a multiplication equation. So this is very easy. I'm going to work right across. 3 times n. Remember, n is going to, it's called a variable, and it's going to represent an unknown number. This is what we're looking for. And what does it equal? It equals 18. Now I have what I need to go to my multiplication chart. Here's my 3, and I'm going to count down to the 18. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Notice that I said 6. So in this case, n represents 6. Get in the habit of circling both numbers. You say, well, why do we circle them? Because we want to use both. This 6 is going to come right here. That's our quotient. The 18 we're going to put back over here. And the reason why is that we want to compare the 18 to the 18 that we started with. In this case, it's exactly the same. There is no difference. In fact, I'm just going to show that by showing the zeros at the bottom. So 18 divided by 3 is equal to 6. 48 divided by 8. Let's use our division. Let's use our division problem to create a multiplication equation. So I'm going to use the 8 right there times our variable. Remember, a variable is an unknown number, is equal to the 48. Now I know my answer for n is going to be 6, but I'm just going to show you on the chart. So I'm going to go to the 8, which is right here, and I'm going to count down to the 48. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. In other words, 6 times 8 is equal to 48. So n is 6. Again, please get in the habit of circling that. It'll really help you later when the problems are a little bit more difficult. We're going to use both of these numbers. This 6 we're using up here as the quotient. In other words, 48 divided by 8 is equal to 6. But get in the habit of comparing it. And of course, we can tell it's the same, but I'm going to write it anyway. And in math, we can just subtract to find the difference. And in this case, there is no difference. So 48 divided by 8 is equal to 6. Okay, I'm going to speed it up just a bit. 72 divided by 9. In other words, 9 times n is equal to what? 72. Now I know it's going to be 8, but let me show you. On my chart, I'm going to find the 9. I'm going to count down to 72. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So in this case, the n is equal to 8. I want to use both numbers, the 8 on top for the quotient and the 72 down here. and we can see that there is no difference. Okay, two more. 54 divided by 6. I'm going to use my information here to write my equation over here. 6, there's my 6, times n, is equal to 54. Well, I know that my answer for n is going to be 9, but let me show you why. I'm going to find my 6, and I'm going to count down to the 54, which you see here. So here's 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. N is equal to 9. The 9 comes up here as my quotient, and the 54 I write down here, and I have no remainder, so my quotient is 9. And finally, one more, 28 divided by 7, so it's going to be 7 times n is equal to 28. And if I use my fact chart, which I know it's going to be 4, here's my 7. I'm going to count down to 28. 1, 2, 3, 4. So in other words, n is equal to 4, but get in the habit of using both numbers. And then 28 to compare, and it looks like that's the same, so we're in good shape there. So 28 divided by 7 is equal to 4. Okay, so quick review. Today's lesson is how to use multiplication facts to solve division. So remember, our focus is solving division, but our strategy was to use multiplication. And we said the reason why we can do that is that multiplication and division are kind of like fact families, they call them inverse operations. We talked about our vocabulary, that the large number that we're dividing is called a dividend. This number here that we're dividing by is called a divisor. The answer is a quotient. And when we have a problem like this, they refer to this as long division. And we would just use this information as a building block. So we have 9, that's our 9, times n, that's the unknown number. We don't know. We don't know that when we first start, but we do know the total. So 9 times n is equal to 36. Okay, everybody, thanks a lot, and we will see you next time.